InSpan Gateway, I'm Asia, and we're going to InSpan on common atmosphere, okay? Because I want to InSpan on what I mean by that. And InSpan is to go deeper within. So go InSpan on common atmosphere, because it's very important when it comes to foundational knowledge, foundational information, and connection. I'm going to talk a little bit about connection and how important that is. Especially scientifically, because there is a science behind connection, and you don't have to be in some computer lab or whatever to identify these things, right? Because this is about spiritual knowledge, because you can't have one without the other and have a complete or more holistic perspective just having one-sided information, right? So we're combining the elements of the masculine feminine principles, the spirit and the forms, in the many forms. So, but we have to recognize that there is spirit existing at all times. Spirit just is, and so is form. So we shouldn't, or at least we should know when to separate the two, because they're not separate unless you perceive it that way. But that's how we're able to separate energies. But anyways, this is a way to identify energies as a star map. It's very important to have foundational knowledge, foundational information, because everything comes from this. And these are things that we need to start challenging, especially when it comes to educational systems, because that's exactly what they are, educational systems. They're a form of training for the human being or animal. But that's if you want to be trained or not. At least if you're going to use some type of form of training, it should be for your best interest, right? But at least know what the hell you're doing before you get into it. Anyways, this is about uncovering things that have been hidden for such a long time, especially when it comes to the science of the spirit, and then how it's very much been separated from actual life, as if spirit was something separate from us, and it's not. But you only gonna be able to perceive that if you can. So, but when it comes to ascending in time and knowledge, we have to have some type of foundational commonality in order for us to go on existing, right? Because these things have been subtly changing over time, as far as how toxic everything is now, and its many forms, because it's been keeping people in a form of separation, not connection. People are more colder. There's no sense of community. It's just all forms of different types of separations. And this is the form of connection. But you have to be able to perceive these things. But it's not even, this is an individual responsibility. But what I want to see, what I'm going to be working on is how we start to challenge information. And this is a way by connecting, okay, to spiritual things individually, so you can intuit for yourself. Like, all it takes is observation and truth, because you have to be able to perceive what the truth is, because it's not something that you can grasp onto. You have to be able to perceive it. You have to have a form of connection to it, right? You have to be able to connect to the truth in order to know what it is. And this is by way of connections in many forms. Fifth house, number 5. Just that symbology is a representation of that energy of connection. That's why the star, the 5-pointed star, pentagram, that's the way of separating energies. But 5-pointed star, in its most general sense, right? Without calling it something else. But this is a form of connection. The spirit or the observer over the 4 elements. So, and the elements represent many different things: water, fire, earth, air, logic, passion, emotions, practicality, the seasons. This represents self-government. This represents courage. This represents creativity. The energy of the star. This is a representation symbolically of the energy of a star. Spiritually, like this isn't only physicality is here is because I was able to draw the form here, but I brought it from spirit into form here. This is what we do every day. It's part of creation because, right, I created this star. I use that star energy. It's not separate. This is just the masculine and feminine principles and how to be able to identify these things. And we can do that for ourselves. We know that whenever we create something, we are bringing something from what? Our imagination, our image, our thoughts, our emotions. When we express, that's what we're doing. We're pushing out. It's a form of out expression. The wheel, right? Emotion. E represents the fifth house. Number 5, energy in motion. It's the operation, right? The operation of the will of the spirit. Self-government. Courage. The star energy can represent these many things depending on how the spirit is using it. So this is dimensional way of looking at energy and things and state of beings, because we are not one dimensional. There's many different dimensions. Scientifically 9 or 10. But that's questionable. I just if for me it helps me to connect is to identify the 0 through the 9, because then the numbers start repeating. So we're able to connect to that at least. And then there's many different ways of looking at what a dimension is and realms of reality. So, but at least we should be able to identify for ourselves the numbers 0 through 9. But that's just, one form of one perception of how to see it, but a connecting one. So connection. Connection. This is a representation of connection. The energies of connection. And how these same energies here represented in the star all came from the star map. It's the same thing. Just a way of pulling out, calling upon different information. Because these are things that we do every day. It's not... And you calling them, you go Google to define a word, you calling upon information. You're calling it from the spirit realm. That's where you're receiving it from. You're putting in an action to call upon some information, or you call upon someone else. It's not separate. So it's about opening up perception by way of seeing, intuiting information, and intuiting life as it is happening, because it's happening in the present moment constantly. So this is by ways of connection to information for us to observe for ourselves. And once we get in tune with knowing our own individual elements, then we can start to see what the fuck is going on. What's going on here? And like I said, this is by way of seeing, right? This is the eye. This is the I, okay? This is a spiritual, symbolic representation of the I, the collective I. You know what I'm saying? We can look at it from that point of reference because it is the holder of the information, the circle. But you have to be able to perceive that for yourself. But anyways, at some point when we're able to open up to this perspective, right, based off of common knowledge, foundational knowledge already observed, we can use that masculine information that's been already scientifically studied through things that are already in the light and compare that to knowledge and things that have been done in the dark, in the spirit, the spiritual science, and how we will be able to know for ourselves, not believe, know that those things go hand in hand and they should have never been separated, but they have been separated for many different purposes. And we ain't in the times for that. I mean, it's like we do need each other, right? We do need each other. But it's about taking responsibility. People who can must